This is Jeff Mucci with RCR Wireless News, and we are here with an exciting Austin startup named Famigo. Q, thanks for joining us today and your team. Tell us about Famigo and maybe give us a quick demo as to what it looks like to your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us. I'm excited to be here. So Famigo is all about mobile and families. You know, as we all know, these mobile devices, they used to be called smartphones, but now tablets are wildly popular with families. But they have all this connectivity, which is also sometimes problematic. And, you know, how do you make it safe for kids and families? But then also, how do you know what they want to see and deliver that family time content when the devices are in family time? And so at Famigo, that's what we do. We make devices kid safe, and we put them into family mode. And then at that time, all the content and experience is engineered to be kid safe, and more importantly, a place where kids can learn and grow.
Give us a quick demo.
Yeah, so basically the way it looks is it's a platform. We're on both Apple and Android, but everyone's device looks like this, and these things do everything. They're incredibly powerful, but, you know, is the Bank of America app interesting to kids? Probably not. Is it dangerous for kids? Probably so. Same thing with the internet. So at Famigo, what you do, put Famigo on. We know what's kid safe depending on the age of your child, and we look at the device. We take all that content. We only pick the kid safe stuff, and we put it in a safe zone on the device. And then once it's there, we make it even safer. We block the home button, so it's a contained environment. We disable advertisements. We prevent in-app purchases, so your kid can't go spend $1,000 on Smurf berries or buy an Austin Healy online. And we also remove all the social networking ads and access to that, so your kids can't get on and tweet or sext or whatever's going on. But then, you know, that's the kind of boring stuff that allows us to do what we do best. And that is, once we're on there, we give this great experience to kids where everything they want and need is available to them. You know, whether that's applications, great video, kid-safe websites. Once we learn about that, we then begin to actually send content to the device. And so as a kid, you don't have to go to Google Play or iTunes and get confused about, you know, what's safe, what's not, get a password from your parents. You just get it all right there, and you can drive that experience. Because there's one thing we know about families, and that's they're voracious consumers of content. And so what we do is we give them a way where they, you know, we grease the skids. We make all that happen in an easy, safe way.
You talk about being the Disney of the next century. Can you talk about what that means, and maybe, you know, are you a content company, you a technology company? Earlier you mentioned about the blurring of lines between the two. Can you expand on what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think the nature of content and family content is just changing. It's to say there's a difference between a content company and a technology company, especially if you're doing this. It's very hard because content's no longer one way. It's not like on a TV or, you know, a published book or something, or even web, you know, where something's just, you produce it and it lives out there. The way content takes form now is when someone else is interacting from the other side. And that's all enabled by this technology. And so to say that I'm a content creator and think that you just put it out there and it lives on its own, I think is kind of a way of thinking of that that's, you know, if not dead, dying pretty quickly. And so I think if you're going to be in this space and deliver a good experience around content to families in this day and age, that you need to have a large understanding of technology and incorporate that into the content.
Well, Douglas, you're Chief Technology Officer. Can you talk about the technology behind the company?
Sure. Great. Sure. So we have a cloud-enabled platform that's all hosted through Amazon AWS, and that's powered by Python. And all the data is stored in MongoDB, which is a NoSQL store. And then on top of that platform, we have two mobile applications, the iOS app and the Android app.
When you talk about NoSQL, what does that mean?
So NoSQL is, I guess some folks call it a movement. It's kind of a more modern technique of storing your data. It's not a relational database like we typically see in most platforms prior to maybe started seeing this maybe 4 years ago or so, where it's more of a document store, not this relational or SQL database like an Oracle or a Postgres. Typically these systems like Mongo and Cassandra are two popular examples. And the data is typically replicated across redundant servers by default, so it's not an afterthought. And so this kind of broad expanse of data is kind of considered in the base design of the database, rather than it being an afterthought of how do we scale this thing up. Just from the ground up, they're designed to be scaled to large data sets.
So why did you pick MongoDB over Cassandra?
Gosh, I think one design choice is it pairs really nicely with Python and building REST APIs, because it is a JSON store. So literally, when you're interacting with the code, it's actually very elegant when you see that the purpose of the platform is to provide a JSON layer to the application. The fact that then that data finds its home in a JSON store. And then inside Python, a Python dictionary looks a lot like JSON. So your transformations are actually kind of elegant and very easy to read. Think that elegance and ease of code reading leads to less bugs, because then it's less obtuse. So that's one design choice. I think that when that decision was made, it was a little less. It was a little more on the frontier of NoSQL, and so and Mongo and Cassandra are definitely the two contenders. So I think it comes down to a lot of personal choice in that too, right? But the one thing I can definitely hearken to is the ease of use on the JSON, just kind of flowing all the way through. And also Cassandra is written in Java. So and if you look at the companies that are using Cassandra, it typically it follows suit. Like a lot of Java shops are using Cassandra, and a lot of like Ruby and Python shops will typically use Mongo. So I think it's almost like part of the tool chain, so to speak.
Why'd you pick Python?
Python is a very expressive language. It's again back to that ease of use and readability. It's very readable, and it's I think that. It's the ability to express things very tersely, and not only improves readability but also reduces the amount of code. And so it means that you can iterate much faster. And so it comes back to that agile and Kanban development I was talking about earlier. If we can have new developers who've just joined the team integrate and provide production-ready code more quickly, it makes a huge impact on the bottom line for the company.
Talk about your development team, specifically the use of interns and how you select people and then ramp people up.
Sure. So we rely pretty heavily on interns because we feel like it's a great way for us to contribute to the community, because we're educating these interns on the business, because frankly there's plenty of things the schools don't pay attention to, and it depends on the school you're talking about, because different schools concentrate on different things, and UT's very heavily focused on theory, so they get a lot of computer science theory, but like a lot of these guys, unless they've gone to great lengths on their own, they don't have a lot of experience with GitHub or Linux, which a lot of startups in town use Linux in their production environments. And to be a developer, you really need to understand how the production environment works. And so we help these students learn the skills they'll need in the workforce, to layer those skills on top of the theory and all the computer science skills that they're learning in school. And then, but it also it helps us because we're growing the next round of future hires at Famigo. So when these guys graduate and these gals graduate, that they're poised to be great contributors on the team because they've already learned how we do things. They've already been contributors already, and also speaking specifically to the contributors, we look for interns that are going to be providing value, and we don't want to just kind of cook up these half-baked exercises. Like, we really try to give them big projects to work on so they feel empowered and that they're driving value to the company.
Can you talk about, you mentioned whether it's a new employee or an intern, no training wheels.
Sure.
That first day at work, what do you try to achieve in that first day and first 3 months on the job?
Sure. First day, we want them to have a fully functioning environment and to actually produce code that we could actually push to production. We don't always push the same day. Many times we do. We're very streamlined in that regard. We do continuous deployments into production, so we'll release software to production multiple times a day. And so if everything's well aligned, we often do push a change the first day for a new hire. And there's two reasons for that. One is to make sure that the new hire gets totally immersed in the culture, and so they understand everything from end to end. And then I guess that's the main goal, is just making sure that they can see the whole picture on that first day, rather than just getting these bite-sized little chunks and kind of missing kind of what it's all about. And then also understanding the culture, that it's all about getting things done and moving the product along for the customer, and not just kind of checking off boxes. So to make sure that culture is instilled from day one.
Can you talk about Kanban and how that fits into your time to market strategy?
Sure. So Kanban is a development methodology we use. It's a fairly modern technique that is gaining popularity, and it allows us to prioritize tickets and not worry about specific delivery dates, because the software gets done when it gets done. And as long as we prioritize the tickets in the order that they need to be done, and it will get done in the right order. And so the idea is that you limit the amount of work in progress. And so if a ticket gets started, you're guaranteed it's going to be done before another ticket gets started. So the other nice thing about that is we're able to reorder the priorities at any point in time, and know that it's not going to impede work or cause people to have to stop and start things, because there's a huge loss in productivity whenever you context switch. So if we say, okay, we guarantee that if you start something, we're going to let you finish it, and we also guarantee that we're going to finish something before starting something else. And so it allows us to reprioritize at any time, and the tickets will flow through without bottlenecks.
Let's switch over to Matt. You're VP of Operations. Can you talk about what your role entails and kind of day in the life of Matt?
Yeah, sure. So I think that there are a couple of things that are interesting. One, when you're in a growing startup, those tasks change a lot. And so far, I've focused a lot on business development, so going out and actually sourcing the content that's available. We have another team of interns, and this is something that that Douglas had mentioned as well. So our interns, when they're reviewing content, that's another thing that we have them do is actually publish a review to our website and to our app on day one. So you see that mirrored on both sides of the business there. Other than going and licensing content for the product, also developing partnerships. So we've developed a partnership with AT&T that our whole team has worked on, but we have a number of other smaller partners, like our video provider, an ebook provider that will be in a subsequent release of the app. And then also our life is pretty dramatically impacted by a piece of legislation called the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And that has implications for how we store data, and so a lot of what I do is working cross-functionally between the technical team and the business side, as well as some of the marketing activities.
What can you tell us about the AT&T deal?
So we have launched a subscription-based product that has been out in the market for a couple weeks now, and it's $7.99, and you get both applications on the Android product as well as video, a YouTube player, and a kid-safe web browser. So we limit the domains that a child can access. It's about $25 to $30 of content for a pretty low price. And so the idea there is that it really makes parents' lives easier. They don't have to go find the content, and then kids can also download it. And the real idea there is that they're able to explore what is available to them without ever running the risk of encountering something that's inappropriate.
Yeah. Well, Let's wrap up with maybe a bit of a background about the history of the company, where you are from a financing standpoint, and then I'd like to hear from all of you about how you came to be as a team and a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So we founded Famigo a few years ago, and I think like many startups, we started with an idea still around family and mobile, but we solved for a problem that wasn't there yet. And so I don't know if you've ever heard the saying that being too early is the same as being wrong. That is true. And so when we got to where we were, when we showed up too early and we were waiting around, we figured out all these other issues that developers were having and that families were having. And that is when we pivoted into this version of Famigo. We're venture backed. We started off, we got some financing from Capital Factory, and then some angels here in town. And then our VC partner is Silverton Partners here in town, which is run by Bill Wood.
Tell us about the team. I mean, did you know these guys from before? How did you come together? Maybe a little bit about your specific background.
Yeah, speaking of interns through the University of Texas, that's how we met Matt McDonnell while he was at UT Law, and then met Douglas just through the Austin community. As far as me, my background is in family media. I've worked for all the family media companies you can imagine, a division of Disney, spent a long time at Nickelodeon, and then even DreamWorks, making big family-friendly movies, things like Nacho Libre, Series of Unfortunate Events, the SpongeBob movie, were movies I worked on. And, while I was working on that stuff, which I just am wild about and love, I realized that the screens were changing sizes, and they weren't 65 feet across anymore. They weren't even 55 inches. They were 5 inches and, 7 and 10. And that the audience was moving there, but those big companies are just, they know how to make content for 65 feet and 55 inches. And it just seemed like this is a richer experience, and you can put kids and parents, in the driver's seat here in ways never before. And so that's what led to the creation of Famigo.
Matt, can you talk about your journey to an Austin-based venture capital mobile app company?
Sure. So I have a background. I was a classroom teacher, so I taught elementary school shortly after graduating, and then I've also was an outward bound sailing instructor. And so that translated, I had this interest in education, but it wasn't, traditional education wasn't really the right spot for me. And so I moved into, I worked at a nonprofit and started 2 dropout prevention programs while I was living in South Carolina. And when the grant funding ran out for those, I came back to school, and that's what originally brought me to Austin. I came to UT Law and met Q within the first semester that I was here. And it also became pretty obvious to me that this was a whole lot more exciting than going and working into a big law firm. So I joined the Famigo team, and one of the things that I think has been interesting about thinking very carefully about how education and mobile technology works is that we see a real opportunity, because parents are the first teachers that a child ever has, to really sort of reshape the way early childhood education looks through our products, and by linking the school and the home in a very seamless way that we haven't really seen anybody else do a very good job with yet.
Douglas?
So I got my start here in Austin with, enterprise software development, so Coremetrics and these various companies, and started to move into the consumer space with a company that Gary Hoover was founding, and kind of just really enjoyed the consumer space a lot more than the enterprise space. And so it's been kind of my mission since then to work within the consumer space, but bring that same rigor that you see in the enterprise space in regards to software development. So processes like Kanban and development methodologies, as well as the people process, that sort of thing. So I've been really enjoying Famigo, and I think it's really empowering to work for a company that's doing such great things, just for families and consumers in general.
Tell us about your degree and where you got your hands-on experience building software companies.
So I first started building software when I was in high school. So The funny thing is, my father is an engineer, and he worked for power plant down in. I grew up in Virginia, and he'd always had these spreadsheets up and was running all these numbers and calculations for shims and whatnot, and so I started. My first software was building software that would allow him to make his calculations without having to do crazy spreadsheets. And so basically, he could just kind of fill out these simple, like, I guess you'd call them forms these days, but and it would kind of spit stuff back, so, and run regressions and stuff like that. So, and then I just kind of got a taste for it, and I made more and more software. And the funny thing is, when I went to school, I had decided that I enjoyed writing software so much that I wanted to study something else. So actually, I studied. I got a degree from Virginia Tech called Interdisciplinary Studies, and so I studied math, biology, and chemistry. And then after school, kind of bounced around for a bit and worked at a few pharmaceutical companies, and ended up writing software for those guys, and deciding that that's what I really love to do, and so I just decided to pursue it, and that's when I moved to Austin to work for Coremetrics.
Before we kind of close out here, you've done a deal with AT&T.
Mm-hmm.
Classic telecom company, mobile telecom company. How do you connect your systems to their systems?
Sure. Yeah. Mainly, the main point of contact with AT&T is around Amdocs, which is their billing solution. So most of our systems are isolated in the sense of our apps do what they do, but then when it comes down to charging the user and or checking to make sure they have access to the subscription, that's all done through their API. It's a SOAP API, which is a technology that kind of predates modern REST APIs. So it'd be XML instead of JSON, and it has a little bit more overhead and whatnot than the more modern streamlined REST APIs. But it's a web service that we just can consume, and honestly, the technology piece was pretty straightforward, but it was working through all of the the moving parts and the minutia of the big company meets the small company who's super nimble and we can react, and we had to figure out how to not freak them out by moving too fast, and so the subtleties of the relationship were the challenges more so than the technology.
Great. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Final question for Q. What's next for Famigo?
Yeah, so I think through the end of this year, so we are a nimble company, so next is this AT&T relationship's been great. We're seeing a lot of growth there, and we expect that to continue through Q4, which is just massive for families and buying. We're also beginning to preload on a lot of devices, both at AT&T and then as well as on our own. Bunch of kids' tablets that'll hit the market through this holiday season that are all prepackaged with Famigo. I think we got some more carriers lined up behind AT&T, as well as some large device makers, and then some pretty exciting content deals with large media companies.
Well, thank you so much for coming to our office here in Austin, and we wish you the very best.
Yeah, thanks for having us.